Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Everyday Investor Podcast. It's Money Month in August here in New Zealand. So right now, allow me to give you 3 activities that you can work on for the rest of your life, not just 1 month. Number 1, work hard, be smart, be creative, make as much money as you possibly can. Number 2, try to keep a lid on your spending. Spend on purpose and according to some sort of design that bypasses your emotion. And number 3, most importantly, invest the difference between what you earn and what you spend the best that you can. Now, if you're a little gun shy or suspicious of the state's motivation or even competence level, then what I'm about to say probably won't be considered that controversial. Any organization employing coercion through media or military force to manipulate the masses will inevitably attempt to manage the money. So, to frame today's episode and to welcome you to Money Month properly, let's approach things a little bit differently. Sycophantic simps suckling on the state's teat are seldom suspicious of the currency that's programmed to steal even from them. They mistrust any form of money that can't be manipulated using interest rates or injections of new supply from centralized authorities. Now, people who think differently often find it a little bit easier to understand the importance of the people's money. Louise Macfarlane is my guest today. Now, Louise is a passionate educator and advocate for people's money, the technology behind it, and the community that it can support. But if you're new here, please do subscribe and like for more contrarian content designed to get you to think for yourself. Enjoy this one today. Let's get started.
いただきます。
Welcome, everyone, to the Everyday Investor Podcast. Today, I'm with Louise Macfarlane. How are you, Louise?
Great, thanks, Darcy. How are you today?
Very good, very good. So what is it that you're really, really passionate about when it comes to crypto, and what's like the main gist of it there?
Well, I think I'm passionate about crypto education for everyone, because the more people that we can share crypto with, the better the movement will be. And when I came into crypto a few years ago now, there were not kind of safe spaces for women just to have general conversations. And I kind of feel sad that I leave men out of my group because it is a really safe, supportive place where people can ask questions and not get, crypto bro lingo thrown at them and things. And I aim to explain things to people so that they can understand what is going on in crypto. So I feel very lucky that I actually ended up with Easy Crypto and customer success, because that's what I get to do every day, thinking about how can we translate this and educate people so that they can come into the industry with us.
Yeah, it's like, I guess I always think about different asset classes, whether it's shares, property, managed funds, or crypto. It kind of comes with its own lingo, its own language, its own culture, and then you have several layers of subculture underneath that. And the crypto bros is like amusing, right? It's a different language, it's a different attitude, it's a different style, and I could appreciate and understand how opposite sex would probably not really be that excited when confronted with that, and it appeals to a certain demography. So how do you break it down? How do you take away a lot of the vernacular, a lot of the language which is specific to that subculture? How do you translate it and sterilize it? Not sterilize it, but how do you kind of take away that stuff so that people can see it for what it is?
Sometimes it does need sterilizing, but
Okay.
I come from an education background, and so it's actually about like writing correctly and explaining things. So it's like when you put do your own research, like afterwards putting the acronym, so that people actually understand. Like if everyone always leads with acronyms and no one ever takes the time to understand them. And I mean, I was lost I'm not a millennial or any of that. So I'm older, and lots of the acronyms, I was always looking them up, and I was like, because you don't want to ask, because then it's like, old person. So I didn't want people to feel like that. So it's like, it's explaining the language and also the concepts of and putting it into like real terms, because crypto and blockchain and Web3, there's so much technical jargon as well and high level concepts. So it's like, how do we break that down into everyday life, and so that people can actually relate to it? Because when it's just high level jargon, people can't see how it has any effect on their everyday life and why they should give anything about it. So that's
Mm.
what I really focus on, is like, let's look at this, like looking at use cases for crypto, because we can go on all the time. I mean, and talk about the money side of it, and that investment side, which is very appealing to a lot of people, but only a certain percentage of people, because the majority of people, I feel, are just getting by at the moment. So thinking about how to make profit and that sort of thing is out of a lot of people's reach, really.
No, I totally get it, and I guess you're mainstreaming something, making it more accessible, more normal, not just in the subset of those who are chasing the NGU, to use an acronym, right? Number go up. It's people that aren't in it for the financial wins and gains and the excitement and the dopamine hit of chasing the latest and the greatest. It's probably framing it in a way which allows more people to go along for the ride, right?
Absolutely. And if we can inspire someone, like if they're all coming in for the mad profits and all the rest of it, and flying some random crypto to the moon, great, whatever, all the power to you. But if it's sparking interest in the ethics and the morals behind it in a small percentage, then perhaps we're getting that untapped market of those people who are going to be the change makers of the future, to be thinking more about how can we use crypto to solve problems. And it's not necessarily crypto. I think one of the big things that we need to make, to start talking about more clearly, is the difference between crypto and blockchain. Because I do feel that they're quite different things. I feel that the crypto markets, it is just like the stock markets. People are gambling and trying to make money, and that's pretty much it. There's not much real heart in those investments. Blockchain, the technology, which is represented by the cryptos, for me, is revolutionary. And that's what I love. Like, that's where I see huge, hopefully positive changes coming in the world based on that technology. It's not from this. And it does worry me a little bit, like people just invest in shit coins and meme coins. And we are in meme coin mania at the moment, from, Solana launching all of these meme coins that we've got at the moment. But once again, it has that, it's that doorway, it's that entrance. So perhaps if some of these meme coin traders are getting into it now, then when that dies off, they'll be like, hold on a minute, there was something more behind this, and I want to start investigating that more.
I think that pretty much describes probably a lot of what really attracted me anyway to crypto, or more specifically to Bitcoin. Was initially, it was this thing, like an invisible thing, a fake thing, I thought, that I didn't really respect and understand until I was forced to really look at it for what it was. And then when I understood it, it kind of helped me connect the dots around probably a lot of the values-based things, like what you were alluding to before. It helped me to understand some of these hard money, free market sort of principles that I would have had my whole life. I now kind of had an outlet through this technology. And it's not just for those people, it's for a lot. Like there's communities everywhere associated with a lot of the different blockchain technologies and initiatives that grow up around it, right? But it just takes a while to realize where they are and where your place is in it all.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's interesting, you wanted to talk about that kind of like tribalism in crypto, of like being really into it. And I think because you got the Bitcoin maxis, and I love Bitcoin, and first thing I purchased was Bitcoin, and that's why I went to a talk and started seeing that value exchange. And I think that's where I really got into crypto, was like that, trying to work out where our value exchange in society broke, because at the moment it is so bad, in my opinion, that we pin so much value to fake things, likes on social media, how much crap you own. And is that what's really valuable, though, is like those real amazing life experiences of like being loved and being successful in something that gives you joy and those sorts of things. So, coming back to that, like Bitcoin tribalism, I think Bitcoin's great. There's a limited amount. It's aimed to fix the broken financial systems that we have. But I do also think that, like, whoever came up with it, Satoshi Nakamoto, they were provocative. They were making people think. And then the beauty of that was, look who they made think. They made like the founders of Ethereum think. They made the founders of Ripple or any of those other ones think and try to problem solve. And for me, like, this is the thing, is that Bitcoin I see as an asset, like of digital gold, and whereas Ethereum I see as a technology. Like, that is the foundation of a technology that's going to revolutionizing the way that we do things. But it challenges a lot of industries. So I don't believe in the tribalism, and I really hate the worshipping of CEOs of crypto companies, because they are just a figurehead. There is thousands of people working in all of these cryptos for like really good reasons, and it's all about that decentralization and like community rather than just figureheads that people worship. Not my cup of tea, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think, but that is human nature, right? We always want to join clubs and join tribes because there's strength in numbers, there's security knowing that everybody else around us will support what we're thinking. But I want to go back to what you said, which I think is actually quite profound, what you said there, just how Bitcoin and some of the other assets, really what they do is they force people to think. And that's the key secret sauce, I think, isn't it? Is that we don't really want to think. We just want to sign up and have somebody else do it for us, and we want to figure out what the right tribe is to belong to, but we actually don't really want to think. And there's only some people that seem, and I don't want to disrespect anybody here, but there seems to be a subset of people who think critically, and some that don't, or they just find it harder, or they don't know what it is, or they just don't like it. It's too uncomfortable. I don't know what it is. But what do you think is the key factor present in those that are open to learning about crypto for what it is and those who aren't?
That's a really good question. I think it's fear. A fear of the unknown and not wanting to go outside of their comfort zone. Because once you really start diving into crypto and what's going on with our world at the moment, it's not a comfortable place. And it's much easier just to stay in the norm and not rock the boat and just stay on that same path that's always been, pay your mortgage, get the newest car when it comes out, upgrade your phone, obey to, the media advertising that tells you to buy more all the time. Going against that grain is really difficult. I had a bit of an experience with it when my daughter was born. She had food allergies, and I had been a terrible person to other people with food allergies before I had a child with them. So it was karma. And we went paleo because she couldn't have dairy or gluten or anything like this. And this was quite a while ago. And paleo was not the norm. It was really against the grain. And I grew up on a farm, and I could not understand why people were so against people eating vegetables and meat, which is how I grew up. So it really showed me, like, when processed foods are the norm and you're doing something else, like, it's really difficult. People really push back against that, like, because we didn't have sugary cereals or any of that kind of stuff. And it's funny, my children are older now, and they said to me recently, because we never had sandwiches and lunches, and they recently said, do you know that everyone always envies our lunches at school? And after years of them always saying we want the same lunch as everyone else, like, it was quite, to stick with it. And that's what I think with crypto is, like, sticking with it, challenging your beliefs and what's going on. And, the beliefs and what's going on at the moment is pretty big. And, like the financial markets and what is happening with our economy is, to start believing or looking at stuff and challenging what you think about. It's scary. It's a scary place, and it's just much easier to stay comfortable and for things not to be your responsibility any of the time. Always blame someone else. That's that's much easier. So I think that's one of the reasons. And it's funny, yesterday or recently there was the the announcement that the government's looking at reducing the insulation measures in New Zealand housing market, and we are already not at worldwide standards. Like, we're already below that, and they're like talking about slashing it again to make it cheaper to build houses. And it just made me laugh, because so many people are always like, oh, New Zealand is not a corrupt country, we don't have any problems. And it's so in our faces, because obviously that decision has been made by lobbyists for the construction companies who want to build these buildings cheaper. There's no thought about the people who are going to live in them have to pay higher electricity bills to heat these houses that the electricity is just flying out of. So it's like, if we start like digging at those fundamentals in our society that are wrong, that's a really scary thing. And Kiwis, I don't think, really want to admit to that at the moment. We're all still like, oh, she'll be right, mate. It's all good. It's like, actually stuff's going southward pretty badly at the moment. And but then on the other side of things, I have this great optimism that because we're a small country and we are innovative, that we could make amazing changes on blockchain to rectify these situations. Will we do it? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we will?
100%. And I love what you're saying, because it, on one hand, you're acknowledging the reality that's out there, that things in a lot of realms aren't actually good. But at the same time, when you realize the depth of the darkness of the things that are broken, and when you ultimately trace it all back, the money is actually broken for a start, and all the motivations around that. And that's kind of what you're alluding to. It forces people to chase profits. We've seen this with a lot of content around property in particular. The reasons why there's that problem is because there's monetary debasement going on. That's why things are unaffordable. But what I like about when you kind of acknowledge the reality, which is not good at all, is that you actually have a corresponding offset. It's like a barbell approach to investing. You have some safe, conservative worldviews, I guess you could say, and then you have some spicy alternative investments, which challenges those things, and combined, that actually gives you a really balanced way to approach the world, because you're not stuck in this negative doomer headset. You're just acknowledging reality, but then also looking at the one source of hope. I shouldn't say the one source of hope. You're acknowledging the technological, the financial and the technological thing that does actually have the power to change it. And in New Zealand, number 8 wire might be replaced with number 8 blockchain. I don't know. There's definitely the capacity. It's in our DNA. We just need to get over the fact that it isn't just about number go up, right? And I think that's why it's so good that you're involved in the educational piece, which means that you're planting these seeds to say to people at this early stage, relatively speaking, hey, it's not just about number go up. It's actually about thinking about things in a safe and realistic way, so that we can find some new solutions to problems that have plagued us for forever, right? And that's what I'm hearing anyway so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you start the journey into crypto and blockchain, you have to read something, and I think it's that revelation of the financial system that's when light bulbs really start going off. Because I did not, and because of our low levels of financial literacy in New Zealand, I think that's even more of a challenge, because we don't know where money comes from, what's happening, where our taxes go, any of that kind of stuff. So it's like actually starting to understand it. So people have got to read one book. And I've read a lot of crypto books, and I find most of them are the same at kind of like the start of them. They all break down what the financial system is. And that's that value exchange. And then it's everyone will go on their own personal journey, which is shaped by their ethics and morals and values of where does that take them. I think I'm a futurist, so I'm like, what next? And if maybe it's not blockchain, I don't see any other viable options at the moment. So it's like, okay, this is the way that we're going. And I do see so many benefits of it. Like, I love the decentralization and the transparency of it. I love decentralization. I think about it a lot of like how can we enable people to access things in a freer way so that we just don't have these one organizations, one entity controlling things. And that was the other thing. So like with the decentralization of Bitcoin, for example, how it was set up was because, when you go to a bank, we've got the bank that controls everything. Yeah. And it's like, can I have my money? Yes, please. And they have that control of whether you have it. So that's a centralized entity that controls things. Whereas with blockchain, Bitcoin, it's a decentralized ledger. So it means that your Bitcoin is stored on this ledger over like thousands of computers around the world. So that means that no one entity can stop you. And this is really important. I don't think people realize that if we all went, if 5% of us went to the bank and asked for our money out, banks would collapse because they don't have it. And
that was it. That was me. I did this actually. Must have been this time last year-ish. I went to go do that, and I withdrew what was for me like a significant amount of cash, and I could only go up to $8,000. I had to come back later on that day to get the rest. And I'm just wondering, well, what happens if there was like even just 5 people that showed up at that bank? They're going to suck them dry full of cash, right? So our money, our leftover resource, our financial energy, we think it's ours, but we actually have to ask for permission to get it. And that's kind of what you're getting at, right? With blockchain, we now have ledgers that don't put intermediaries in between us and our resource, right?
Absolutely. And but it's personal responsibility because it means that you are your own bank. Like it's up to you to protect what you've got. You don't have to ask anyone else for it. You've got the access to it whenever you like it. If I wanted to, I could send you my whole balance right now. And if it was on Bitcoin, it would probably take about 9 minutes for the block to confirm and it would be done, or it could be done faster, depending. So it's, that decentralization, and how I'd like to see decentralization done. I would like to see it in all aspects, because at the moment we don't live in a democracy. We live in a dollarocracy, which is where you vote every single day with the money you spend. And you'll vote once every 3 years. Like, let's be quite realistic. We're just voting for pretty much the same thing, just a different color. That's
totally
there's
true.
there's no significant change. Realistically, policies are not made on research.
Please pardon the intrusion on today's episode. There are over 560 million crypto users worldwide right now, and that number's growing by around 10% a year. If you haven't made a start yet in this space, the good news, you're still early. The bad news, each day you delay making a start, well, you risk becoming a little bit late. Now, I'm not here to claim that crypto will solve all of the world's problem or provide you instantaneous returns. I just want everyday investors to consider it a legitimate part of an investment strategy. So I created Crypto 101, Crypto with Confidence, a free 5-part video course designed to give you a solid understanding of buying, selling, swapping, and holding crypto confidently. Join me and 4 other experts to learn the principles that will reduce the chance of loss and increase the odds of success. Start your own crypto journey with confidence by taking the free online course now. The link is in the description to sign up. We'll see you there.
That's backed up with any good evidence behind it. It's based on lobbyists and things like that. So I'd love to see the decentralization of government, and that the only way I can see that happening is on blockchain. And it is possible because we've got countries like Estonia who are already doing stuff like this. They are already voting on blockchain and have been for a long time. If we're going to go down the decentralized blockchain ways, we could be voting regularly on politics, on policies that are coming out. Perhaps everyone who is qualified to talk on, let's say, hospitals. If all medical workers, everyone who works in the healthcare system, got given a governance token, like a crypto, to vote, and then any graduate who was in the system, nursing, medical school, radiology, anything like that, they could also get a vote. And then perhaps when like government policies came out, it went out to those citizens who are qualified to analyze this information. And then here's the budget. Should we do this or should we do that? And they were the people that made the decision instead of a government official who's got 15 portfolios and doesn't really know what's going on with any of them. That would be decentralization that I'd like to see.
And you do really have a fusion here of personal responsibility. Austrians would love that to a certain extent as well, right? But you have the key stakeholders who actually know something about it and who have some decent skin in the game, actually having a say in how things work, rather than people who are put there by the dollar from a subgroup of corporate life. Let's be honest, it's money that's real, and really that kind of has to exist because of currency debasement anyway. There always has to be that motivation, and it's always driving for more and more and more. So you get this complete breakdown and deterioration of society because our real god here is the dollar, which is actually being controlled by the state. So yeah, what you're saying effectively is taking the power back from the state. We got to be careful with how we say this before we get arrested, right? But taking the power back, rage against the machine. So tell me though, around like we're talking about terms like decentralization, blockchain. There's another term that will come up a little bit, like digital assets is another one. Web3. So I want to break down a little bit of this vernacular just so people can kind of attach themselves to this. When we talk about Web3, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a different type of internet here, or how is this connected to the blockchain conversation?
Yeah. Well, where we've come, so we have to think about like what was Web 1 and what was Web 2. So how did we get here? And I think this is all of the conversations that we need to have. You have to look back at history and learn how did we get here before we can think about where we're going. So it's like Web 1, .com bubble, like everyone having a website. I remember one in the early 2000s, like pigs with wings or something selling for some incredible amount. And, like it was a free for all. It was a very open market. Anyone could do anything. And then we kind of came into Web 2, which was controlled and is controlled by a few corporations who own our data. And we give it to them freely, and they make all of their money from it. So we have got Google, we have got Meta, we've got Amazon, we've got all of these giant companies, and their main profit is us and our data. So that's Web 2. And Web 2 is also like, when you think about it, when you're asked to log into something, and you've got an option on the front of the screen that says log in with your Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, Apple ID. That is Web 2. Web 3 is when we take back our data as individuals and they need to ask us for permission to access it. So this is where the blockchain comes in, because it's like, how can that happen? Like, it's got to take a change in the technology to enable that to happen. So, and it's as simple as, at the moment, everyone's paying with their phones, holding it up to something. Like, instead of Apple owning that, you own it. And it's not that easy to get out of Web 2 and to stop having your digital footprint at all. It's actually it's really difficult. I have a friend at the moment who's trying to get off everything, and it's taking months to get images off Google Drives, close down Dropbox, and, because it's just become such an easy part. Oh yeah, I'll just log into this with my Google profile. That's so easy. I'll just do that. So it's like, we need to go on to the next thing. And it's like, so I'm moving overseas in the future, and I need my medical information for the country that I want to move to. Now, New Zealand has appalling collection of medical information. So to get that all together in one place, I've got to apply to so many different entities for what they've got. And I don't own that. Like that's owned by the medical system, not me. So it's my medical data. Why don't I own the information about me? And then if someone wants to see my files about my broken toe or my broken finger or whatever, they need to ask me for permission, because I have no idea currently who is looking at my medical data. I don't know if it's being used for research. Of course, they should ask me, but I don't know if they are. So, Web3 is about returning our data to ourselves for ownership. So obviously, that's pretty controversial, because that threatens Web2, who are the biggest companies in the world at the moment. So it's not going to be an easy ride, but I think it's one that's worth fighting. I think it's definitely, I would like it. I want to be able to easily go overseas with my medical data anywhere, take it with me on my mobile device, stored in the blockchain, so that I can access it anywhere that I need it.
Well, it seems more than reasonable, and the technology exists, and it could actually be made easy. Like, there's no reason why we couldn't mint an NFT with our data, which we hold on our own wallet. Maybe it's a multi-sig wallet, and it has basically everything about us, but we custody everything about us with us. So, yeah, to me, that sounds a perfect outworking of the sovereign individual right there. But I guess the word that you said before, fighting, and I just wonder how a fight like that would occur, because I would agree that you can't take a business model away from an entity, whether it be the current techno oligopoly that we have or the nation state system. You're not necessarily going to find that they just want to give it to you. That would be an interesting scenario if that occurred. There may be a bit of a fight, and I think that. And I think this was Mises, that Austrian economist who coined this phrase, or I'm butchering it, but instead of actually a frontal attack, you have to kind of go around the side, and you got to create an alternative for people to start using, so they're voting to use a different system, which is better, rather than actually demand it. Do you kind of see this fight to be more of a peaceful exercise where there's just less demand for the status quo because people are educated enough to choose something better? Like, is that kind of how things could play out, or do you think there could actually be some degree of a fight?
Oh, I think we're in the fight now, like with
Right.
I think we've got it with the ETFs. I don't believe that they're there for the betterment of crypto. Institutional investment for me is as the numbers go up, so people like that. However, it means that the same people are hoarding again the same wealth again. I don't see that. So I see their actions as a direct battle of like them taking on the small guys, the little fries, us. You know,
Okay,
they're trying to.
let's dig into that. So yeah, we're talking about the ETF. So just for those who might not know the terminology, exchange traded fund. So earlier this year, we had the launch of several Bitcoin ETFs. We also have the ETH ETF, which is approved in principle. So it just means basically that these digital assets, which we are able to own directly on our own wallets, now being owned by these massive fund managers and these big honeypots, these big pools for us to make it easier and safer for us to hold it, right? And what you're saying here is that you don't see that as a good thing, and I'm sure there's more than just one reason why that's a good thing, but concentration of that resource into one place that's managed by one entity or a selection of entities, is that your primary concern with these exchange traded funds?
Yeah, well, they haven't made the world a better place so far with their billions of dollars and their centralization and stuff. They're not out there for the good of everyone. They're out there for the good of the few people that have access to them and that actually use them. And yeah, I was living in Europe at around 2007, 2008.
Right.
So I saw with my own eyes what was happening there at that
Yeah.
time. And I don't see, and I correlate, perhaps correctly, perhaps not, the two entities, the same sort of people who
Yes.
I don't think,
100%.
like buying a
Yeah.
private jet, having the flashiest stuff. I don't see that as making the world a better place at all. So, and my whole thing is crypto should be self-custody. the best person to look after it is each person. And I think we've been dumbed down so much. Like, we doubt each other and also our own intelligence to do good things, because we're told all the time in the media, like, how bad the next person is, how stupid they are, what bad decisions they make. Or we're not told the brilliant things that are happening much in society anymore, or the good stories. And so I think that puts so much doubt in us, of each other. And that's what is wanted, so that we don't like all go, hold on a minute, let's do something about it. Let's change this, because it could be fairer. We could be looking after each other better, being more caring. I mean, we live in a pretty hostile thing. And, like that thing about coming around and like attacking slowly. I definitely see this. Like, everyone's like, oh, it's not doing anything this year. And I don't see this as a this year revolution. This is like what's going to happen by 2030? What's going to happen by 2035? For me, I'm a mother. My children are fluent in blockchain language. They already know what ledgers are, what private keys are, all of that language.
You're a good mom. You're a good mom, Louise. That's good on you.
They don't have much choice, but
they can't speak English, but they can speak blockchain. That's good.
Yeah, totally. But like, having that language, it's like it's going to be like, the more people that we can input that to. And I think one of the first people that I got in crypto with, like, listening to their podcasts, it was either Naval or Balaji, and
Right.
I'm pretty sure both of them talk a lot about how the next, amazing entrepreneurs are going to come out of African and Indian kind of populations, that are a lot poorer, but as soon as they get access to that technology, things are going to change. And I feel like that could be the same with New Zealand. I think we've got a whole heap of untapped resources in our education system, that if we enable more people to experience this sort of stuff and take that responsibility back, then we can see great progression. But it's going to take a while. It's not going to happen right now. But I think that ETFs are a Trojan horse to try and take crypto down. So they'll scoop up as much crypto as they can as quickly as possible, and then they'll dump it and try and crash the market.
Okay. Well, I'll come back to that in a second, but just to kind of pull on the thread that you started to lay down before that, I think that's really interesting around how, and I'm butchering what you said, but how when a new technology comes into existence, it unlocks more value, right? Like, let's say, for example, there was a new type of tree that could be planted in a desert that could grow to maturity within 5 years and create a different type of pulp that sucked up carbon, like an amazing type of technology. What happens if that changes the value of all this land that's kind of currently useless, right? And what happens if you had a technology that could convert solar energy into actual financial energy? Well, now you have a use case for developing places exposed to a lot of sun, but in the middle of nowhere. As long as it has access to the internet, you can actually mine Bitcoin. And so technology has the capacity to unlock and create the ability for new wealth to be mined, which then means that things that are not valuable, including people sometimes, which is kind of what you're alluding to as well, become often the most valuable. But meanwhile, in this battle, there's this tussle to lock up these assets by the same people that not that long ago were railing against these assets. Like, I'm thinking of, say, Donald Trump, Larry Fink. Recently, there's Michael Dell, Jamie Dimon, like really recently. Unbelievable U-turns in terms of their points of view around, say, tokenization of real world assets, or blockchain, or Bitcoin in particular. That tells me that, hey, when these types of people start saying it's a good idea, yeah, I can kind of resonate with what you're saying. It's fine for the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up, if you have hairs on the back of your neck. I'm not sure, but like that's rational, right? You should be a little bit suspicious, and that's actually just a subset of critical thinking, which again is something that most of us have been, dare I say, programmed not to do over time, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, come on, like Donald Trump, like a crypto expert. I mean, I cannot work out what is going on with Donald Trump at all. Like, I can't, there is so much going on there. It's next level, but I do not believe that he is chasing crypto because he thinks it's a good idea. I think he is chasing voters. And politicians say what they want to be able to get votes. I mean, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, like, he famously said that he would fire any of his staff that were buying Bitcoin. Meanwhile, his son was like packing his bags full of Bitcoin at the time. Like, they only say, they flip-flop around. They're only in it for themselves. They're not in it for the tech at all. So that they're all, number go up people.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. And your experience, I guess, living through the global financial crisis, 07, 08, that's effectively when Bitcoin was created out of that. And I think often the people that are probably younger people, I guess, who are jumping on the crypto bandwagon now, they might not necessarily appreciate the genesis story about not just how Bitcoin came about, but the atmosphere around how it was birthed, like what was the actual intention and the thinking of that community that gave birth to it. And a lot of it was the spirit of independence raging against the machine and Chancellor on the brink, right? Like it really was a rejection of the status quo, a rejection against the financial system. And for me, I really appreciated this when I read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Have you read that book, Louise?
No, it's on my list.
Oh, it's great. It was written so long ago that it's not kind of infected, is a terrible word, but it's not influenced by, say, any sort of crypto narrative. Like, this is just the story of the Federal Reserve System and how that came about. But what are some of the books that you've read that have been influential in terms of kind of opening up your mind a little bit into how the money world works?
The Bitcoin Standard is a standard one. I must admit, though, I did find it a bit boring because I found it very repetitive and a little bit lectury, which I wasn't quite into. So the book that really helped me understand economics and where we are at the moment was Talking to My Daughter, A Brief History of Capitalism by Yanis Varoufakis, who he was the Greek finance minister when the IMF was trying to bankrupt Greece.
Yeah, wow.
He wore a leather jacket. He did things very alternatively. He was not popular. His plan was, he wanted to do what Iceland did after the global financial crisis of bankrupting the country, breaking away from the IMF, the Eurozone, and putting all the bankers in prison who had stolen all the money instead of bailing them out. Unfortunately, he wasn't successful and he was kicked out and they went into austerity, which meant that they had to put up the retirement age, which was young, hospitals collapsed. It was pretty bad stuff. So his book, that Talking to My Daughter, it just, the way that he explains it is explaining it to a normal person, like I've read a lot. I love books and stuff like that, but I just need things in a simpler term. I don't want to read like really heavy but economic books. It just kind of does my head in a little bit. So that was really good. And another book of his that I really enjoyed, which is actually a fiction, but really to make me think. And he is not a big supporter of crypto or blockchain at all. In fact, he doesn't really think it's going to do much. But his book was called Another Now. And it's really interesting because it talks about global financial crisis, and if there was like a split in reality and that two different nows happened after it, and if people participated in kind of like a peaceful protest, going around the edges to try and make change happen. And I found that really interesting. I've read it a couple of times. Each time I get something different from it because it's a really interesting book. And I mean, a book that I've read a lot because I lived in Barcelona for a period of time was actually 1984 by George Orwell, because he lived in Barcelona. There was Orwell Plaza, which was very close to where I lived. And this book was written in 1939, I think, and we carry around Big Brother in our pocket now. So there's a lot of like similarities of how to make you think about what's actually going on that real deeper level. Other books in crypto is Lynn Alden, which I've actually been really enjoying this. It's called Broken Money and Why Our Financial System is Failing Us and How We Can Make It Better.
Such a good book. Yeah.
Great book. I've been listening to it actually, and I keep on going back over different things because certain parts of it are like, wow. And I noticed that with all of the crypto books that I have read, the Bitcoin Standard, there's been a few other ones as well. They all start with that value exchange, like how is the financial system set up? So I think if you understand that at the start, it helps everything else. Then you've looked back at history. Now you can start looking forward to solutions, like what next?
I think that is kind of the key is to actually acknowledge history, not through what we've been told, and not to search out like just dark conspiracies around history, but to actually just try your very best to filter out all the noise and just try to understand it void of interpretation from others, like just the facts, ma'am. And then you have that platform, right, where you can assess whether or not something is more than just an investment opportunity. Because ultimately, like what I'm about is building wealth, but that doesn't mean buying stuff that goes up in value. That's a very narrow, distilled version, just in some sort of fiat-based financialized world. That's missing the point entirely. I'm about multi-dimensional wealth, which means that what you're trying to do is you're trying to own your choices in the future to try and make things better in your own world first, and then hopefully the world around you, right? And that's kind of why I think that everyday investors need to be looking at this space, because it is the bright spark. It really is. Like, this is the place where you can go if you're feeling really depressed about how the world actually works, when you realize how it actually works, because it'll give you hope. It'll give you hope that there's some people that actually believe we can turn this around. And when you start to think like that, then now all your efforts are actually aligned towards promoting the thing that's actually going to do something, rather than just the thing that promotes your little camp, right?
You know, like the community as well of being around inquisitive people is amazing. And the inclusivity, like, I had to create it for myself with the women's aspect, but like once you actually get somewhere, it is pretty inclusive. Like everyone is welcomed in. And I love that, in the traditional world, it's always been like, where have you worked? What degree do you have? Where's your family from? And it's all that kind of stuff. No one cares in crypto. They're like, what coin do you own? Like, how did you start? And those sorts of questions. So I think the community side of it, this is what NFTs had the potential. They showed us how great they could be for community building back in the last bull run, where there were great NFT communities around art, and it could have been a game changer for creatives. And a lot of creatives are still putting out their art as NFTs, and they have great followings. There are some wonderful New Zealand artists who are very big in the space, and they're really supportive and lovely people. So you've got that community aspect, and you've also got like cryptos that make a change for communities. So you're talking about decentralization before, like Power Ledger decentralizes solar energy. So it's like, if my neighbor has got solar panels on their house and they face one way and I face another way, then we could actually share our power together for, when one of us is not producing enough or using more electricity and stuff like that. And so, this is the power of decentralization. Imagine that, if like the whole neighborhood, your whole street, I live in a great community. So like that could actually be a realistic option where I live. I know my neighbors would all be into that. And the power of also doing that on the blockchain and taking it away from a centralized authority is that it becomes trustless. So you don't have to trust that the other people will do things, because it's just like no changing the goalposts. It's like, we are making a contract. This is what our contract is. It is programmed. That's it. it's going to execute according to those. The best one that we can see in that was the difference in collapses of crypto companies. So in New Zealand, we had a crypto exchange called Cryptopia. It went into liquidation in 2019, I think it was. Yeah, and then it got hacked, and it's quite a fascinating story. We'll make a great movie one day. But anyway, that I'm one of the creditors for that. I'm still waiting to get my tokens back. And Grant Thornton, the accountants, is in charge of that, charging so much money a month to keep going through that liquidation process, and we still haven't got anywhere. Now, on the other side of things, we've got FTX, which collapsed 2022.
Yeah.
And a lot of their funds were tied up in smart contracts. So guess what? They were automatically paid back to the crypto companies that had loaned them money. Like it triggered, it was done. And the FTX liquidation process, I'm pretty sure is finished. That only happened like 2 years ago. So it shows you like how quickly things can actually get resolved if we go towards technology and taking out the middle people who are just in it to clip the ticket.
Yeah, take out the rent seekers, split the difference, right? And again, you're unlocking wealth, you're disintermediating. Man, there's so much to this. Now, going back to this self-custody thing, and perhaps we'll come in for a landing around this. You were kind enough to volunteer your time on one of the lessons in our 5 easy-to-follow courses in the new online course, Crypto 101, Crypto with Confidence online course that you can access now. Link is in the show notes. And you were really awesome just in terms of how you explain the area that you covered. I don't want to give too much away. But going back to this self-custody piece, the best thing to do, really, in my view, is to get educated around being your own bank so that you can safely hold your assets yourself. At the very least, you should be doing that with a portion of your digital assets or your crypto, right? And you presumably you would agree with that, but there's some risks around that, and there's some things that people should know. And we don't need to go too much into this because the course covers that. But what are just maybe some of the misconceptions or some of the biggest risks that people have when they have the confidence to get started, but they don't necessarily have the skill set to get started safely? What are the things that people should watch out for?
Education costs something. It either costs time or money or both. So like to get started in crypto, you've got to put something into it so that you can move it around, see how it works, and explore things, push buttons. With, being your own bank, it takes time to learn. So I think it's really important that people have confidence in themselves that they can learn new things. This is a new place. So, and also we're still ahead of the bell curve. Like we're still early adopters. So questions should be welcomed by everyone of reaching out to other people. And I think everyone is really happy to help and encourage other people to self-custody, which means be your own bank, hold on to your own crypto. And you've just got to practice, setting up wallets. You can, as long as you don't have heaps in there, you can delete them and reinstall them if you've got them set up correctly. There's so much great content out there on how to do it. But I think the biggest thing is trust yourself, because no one else knows what your values, what your morals, where you're going, what your interpretation of wealth is. So yeah, I think we're all so much more, we've got so much more intelligence than we're given credit for. I think we're really 100%. Dumbed down at the moment in society. It makes me sad. I see so many brilliant people who doubt themselves. I'm just like, yeah. Then there's so many dumb people who don't doubt themselves.
No comment. Hey, I might be one of them myself. No, that's really cool. That's really cool. And so thank you again, Louise, just for contributing to that course as well. And as a reminder, if people want to sign up, it's absolutely free. The link is in the show notes. Sign up to Crypto with Confidence now so that you can actually get started and increase the odds that it's going to be a good, positive experience. So thank you very much, Louise. So Louise Macfarlane. Now, if people want to follow you, where's the best place on the socials? I'll put some links in the notes so people can follow you. You've got this Facebook group, but you mentioned before that Facebook's kind of not that good in terms of allowing your stuff to be visible when you use the crypto word. But where can people go if they want to pick up what you're laying down?
LinkedIn. Facebook Crypto Women Australia and New Zealand. It's a private group. You do actually have to be a woman to get in. Or my LinkedIn, which is Louise Macfarlane. Reach out, say hi. Love to have a chat about stuff. Easy Crypto, of course. I also have a Substack, which is CWANZ, and that's where I'm actually putting out. I have been doing a newsletter for the last 3 years, which I've been putting in privately but now I'm trying to get that out to a wider audience and it has a lot on my kind of political thoughts, not like which party to support, but like what's the future of politics.
That's fantastic. Oh, cool. Well, I might subscribe to that myself because I can be a man and do that. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Cool. Hey, something for everyone. Awesome. Thanks again, Louise.
Thanks, Darcy. Bye.